Okay, so today we're going deep on something pretty big. Elon Musk and his ideas about cutting federal spending, specifically when it comes to Social Security and other benefit programs.
Yeah, this is important stuff, right? I mean, we're talking about potentially major changes to how the government spends money.
And we've got some really interesting sources to work with, news reports that lay out what Musk has been advising President Trump about. And get this, they actually include direct quotes from Musk himself.
Oh, wow. So we're getting it straight from the source.
Exactly.
Okay.
Plus, we'll see how politicians from both sides and the public are reacting. It's a lot to unpack, but I think our mission today should be to really understand what Musk is arguing for, what kind of data is being used to back it up, and what the bigger picture implications could be for all of us. I mean, at the end of the day, these programs affect millions of people.
Absolutely. And, it's easy to get lost in the details, but I think we can break this down in a way that makes sense, without overwhelming anyone.
All right, so let's start with the core of Musk's argument. He's basically saying that if we want to make a serious dent in government spending, the big one to go after is federal spending on what he calls entitlements, specifically Social Security and other benefit programs. He even throws out this number, $500 billion to $700 billion in waste that he thinks could be cut. I mean, that's a huge chunk of change.
Yeah, that's a massive number. And it raises the question of, where exactly are these cuts supposed to come from? Is he just talking about Social Security and these other benefit programs, or is there more to it?
Well, that's what's kind of unclear from these reports. He doesn't really give a detailed breakdown of where that 500 to 700 billion figure comes from or which specific programs beyond Social Security he has in mind.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, the sheer size of that number suggests he's thinking pretty broadly.
Right. It seems like he's looking at a pretty wide range of potential targets for cuts if he's talking about that much money.
Now, when it comes to Social Security specifically, he's made some pretty strong statements. I mean, he actually called it the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time, which is quite a label.
Yeah, that's pretty provocative.
And he didn't stop there. He went on to claim that there are 20 million people who are definitely dead marked as alive in the Social Security database, which, if true, would suggest some pretty serious problems.
Yeah, if that were the case, that would definitely raise some red flags. But the acting commissioner of the Social Security Administration, Lee Dudek, actually pushed back on those claims.
Really?
Yeah, he completely rejected the idea that the system is just handing out payments to millions of deceased people. He explained that even if someone is still marked as alive in the records for a while after their death, there are processes in place to make sure they don't keep receiving benefits.
So it's not as simple as like, 20 million dead people are getting checks.
It's not according to the Social Security Administration. And there's actually some data from the Social Security Inspector General that sheds some light on this whole issue of what they call improper payments. Their reports show $71.8 billion in improper payments from fiscal years 2015 through 2022. Now, $71.8 billion, that's still a lot of money. But it's important to remember that improper payments don't always mean fraud. It could be overpayments, underpayments, or payments to people who weren't actually eligible for a certain period. So while it's something to be concerned about, that $71.8 billion represents less than 1% of all the benefits paid out during those 7 years.
Less than 1%, that's a far cry from the image Musk is painting of massive fraud costing hundreds of billions every year.
Exactly. The data just doesn't seem to back up that level of widespread abuse.
Okay, so here's where things get even more interesting. Musk also links these federal entitlement programs to immigration. He said that they act as a mechanism by which the Democrats attract and retain illegal immigrants by essentially paying them to come here and then turning them into voters. He even brought up the Great Replacement theory, which, for those who don't know, is...
Yeah, it's a pretty controversial theory. The idea that there's a deliberate effort to replace certain populations with others. And by invoking that, Musk is kind of injecting this whole other layer into the discussion about federal spending.
Right. He's suggesting that these benefit programs aren't just about helping people in need, but that they're part of some political strategy tied to immigration and elections.
It definitely adds a whole other dimension to the debate, one that's often very divisive.
So let's talk about the political reactions to all of this. President Trump has publicly said he wants to protect Social Security from cuts, but then he has Elon Musk as a key advisor who seems to be advocating for exactly that. Doesn't that seem a little contradictory?
It does seem like there's some tension there, but remember, Trump also talked about using a scalpel instead of a hatchet when it comes to spending cuts. So maybe he's open to some targeted reductions framed as getting rid of waste and inefficiency without completely dismantling the system.
And what about other Republicans? Are they all on board with Musk's ideas?
Well, it's not a completely unified front. You have some Republicans, like Representative Richard Hudson, who are really supportive. He said he hopes Musk can help with the fight against waste, fraud, and abuse in these programs.
So he sees this as a chance to finally tackle those issues.
Yeah, exactly. But then you have other Republicans, like Representative Tom Cole, who actually celebrated the fact that Social Security and other federal offices in his state were still up and running.
It's like a bit of a subtle pushback there.
It could be interpreted that way. Maybe he's worried about the potential impact of big cuts on the people he represents who rely on those services. So there's definitely some division within the Republican Party on this issue.
And what about the general public? How are people feeling about all of this?
Well, there was some polling data from mid-February that gives us a glimpse into public opinion. A CNN's SRS poll showed that about half of Americans don't like the idea of Trump giving Musk such a prominent role as an advisor, while only about a third see it as a good thing.
So it's pretty split.
Yeah, and there was also a Washington Post Ipsos poll that found Americans were divided on whether they thought Musk would focus on cutting wasteful spending or if he'd end up affecting necessary programs. So it seems like there's a lot of uncertainty and concern among the public about what these proposed changes could actually mean.
It's also interesting to think about Musk's role in all of this. I mean, he's advising the president on potentially huge changes to government programs while still running his own massive companies.
Right.
And he seems to prefer communicating directly with the public through his social media platform, X. We've seen him use it to criticize Tesla dealerships, boast about how much news X controls, and even get into it with people like Senator Mark Kelly. It's a pretty unconventional way to operate for someone advising a head of state on such important matters.
Yeah, it's definitely not your typical approach, but it does give him a lot of direct access to a huge audience. He can basically bypass traditional media and shape the narrative himself.
So when we zoom out and look at all of this, what are the big themes that we're seeing play out here?
Well, I think a lot of this boils down to this long-running debate about the role of government in American society, especially on the conservative side. The idea of shrinking the size of government and cutting spending, particularly on big entitlement programs, has been around for decades.
So this isn't really a new idea.
Not at all. But what we're seeing now is this clash between wanting to be fiscally responsible and the potential consequences of making major cuts to programs that a lot of people depend on. It's this fundamental question of how do we balance economic goals with taking care of our citizens.
Okay, so let's recap what we've learned in this deep dive. Elon Musk is pushing for major cuts to federal benefit programs, specifically Social Security. He argues that this is the key to reducing government spending, and he's pointed to what he sees as rampant waste and fraud. But the data from the Social Security Administration and its Inspector General doesn't really back up the scale of fraud he's suggesting. These proposals have sparked a lot of debate and controversy with different reactions from politicians and a divided public cabinet. And all this is happening within this bigger discussion about the role and size of government in our society.
And I think the big question for you to consider is this. Given that the data we've looked at shows improper payments in Social Security are less than 1% of all benefits paid, what might happen if we drastically cut funding to these programs based on claims of much larger scale waste and fraud? Think about the people who rely on these benefits, the potential effects on the economy, and the broader societal impacts. It's a complex issue with a lot of different angles to consider.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back next time with another look at a trending topic. See you then.
See ya.